You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Tricia Gardner.
So welcome to the show. This week we've got Dan Heskett coming on. He's a poker player and he's also a former client who decided after working with me to get qualified in hypnotherapy. And we're just going to be talking to him about the reasons he decided to do that and his thoughts on the game. So Tricia, what have you got for us this week?
Well, I've got a little article and it has to do with the secret to better learning. And I think everyone's really going to like it. So, you know how when you're playing a sport, like I took tennis lessons, and when I took tennis lessons, for example, my tennis coach would be like, okay, Tricia, today we're going to hit like 100 forehands, right? And you just hit all the forehands. And then maybe next you would do 100 backhands or whatever the case may be. What research is finding is that sort of blocked practice is not as helpful to learning as if you mixed it up. So for example, if he would pitch a forehand and then the next one would be a backhand and the next one would be, a volley or whatever, different types, that is in the moment going to feel like I'm not learning as much, but in the long term, it's going to help me learn a lot faster. So they did a study where they said, okay, we know this is the truth for motor type skills. So tennis, baseball, things like that. They wanted to find out, does it work, in other more academic areas? So they did it specifically with math. And math is kind of the same thing where, if you're doing one type of problem, they have you do like 50 of that same type of problem. So they had that group, and then they had the other group where it was just randomized different types of problems. And again, it was the same finding. So that particular technique where you practice different things is called interleaving. And interleaving has been shown time and time again to improve performance, particularly over time. So with the math study, when they tested them a day after they interleaved their practice, they did 25% better than the group who did not. And when tested a month later, the interleaving group did 76% better. So what this means for poker players is you really need to think about ways you can mix up your practice. Don't just be doing the same thing over and over again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. That's really, really interesting study. Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Okay, well, let's give Dan a call. So Dan, thanks for coming on the show. If you could introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, sure. My name's Dan Heskett. I've been a professional poker player for about the last 8.5 years. I started off playing cash games. Been a bit of a journeyman in poker. I've played 6 max cash and a bit of heads up cash until I finally sort of found my footing in playing heads up hypers probably about 4-5 years ago. Played fairly high stakes, playing up to $300 games on PokerStars and 600 games occasionally on Full Tilt. And now recently I decided to take my career in another direction. After working with Elliot, I decided to go and copy that route and actually studied at the same college as Elliot. So now I'm a fully qualified hypnotherapist and I've started to work with a select handful of poker players working on their mental game, inner game issues, and hoping to propel them and help them get better success in that way.
So that's very interesting that Elliot inspired you to take a whole new avenue with your career.
You're making me blush here, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, I wasn't particularly looking for any mental coaching at the time, and tilt or things like that weren't a big problem for me. But I had a friend who's also been in the podcast called Paul Collins, Cogdis, who was really adamant that working with Elliot was really terrific and I should do it. So got in contact and I just really loved hypnotherapy. I thought it was fascinating. I've always been a bit into kind of self-help and reading around the subject of psychology and, whether it's Malcolm Gladwell or 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, all those kind of things. So it really kind of piqued my interest. And I just felt really, really excited by it and wanted to do the course and kind of see where it took me.
And I
That's
mean, it was oh, sorry. I was going to say it's quite a few years ago that we sort of worked together. And if you don't mind
Yeah.
talking about it, what sort of changes did you notice, pre and post hypnotherapy, if you don't mind covering those things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, for me, I think definitely anxiety was a big issue. And I think as well as talking with some of my clients now, it's funny that they say some of the things and have some of the mindsets that I did before having hypnotherapy. So one client recently was talking about stress, and they just said, well, there's nothing I can do about it, that I can't change the amount of stressed I am. And and I couldn't help but smile when they said that, because it was so interesting about how I felt exactly the same. I thought that I had certain levels of anxiety, I got certain levels of stress and other kind of negative emotions that would hold me back. With hypnotherapy, really just getting rid of all those negative attributes and all those problems really just helped me get on with my life, and really kind of improved my poker, my focus, concentration, but also socially as well. Just making me feel a lot more at ease in having conversations with people or interacting, and a lot more at home. So I really loved working with Elliot. It was really great. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could one day kind of develop that skill set and help other people have the sort of changes that I witnessed in myself.
You kind of touched on something that I want to go back to around, having a lot more confidence when you're interacting with others. So are you doing quite a bit of work in that area right now with poker players and maybe even other people?
Yeah, so I'm kind of specializing in two areas. I'm going to be working with poker players and developing that sort of market, and have a coaching page on Elliot's site. But also I've been working with another group of people. So I'm also specializing in men who have confidence issues and anxiety around talking with women. I found that actually a lot of people can have this issue, and it can really hold them back. People who are completely sociable and confident in a work environment, or even with their friends, when it comes to their dating life, suddenly things kind of fall apart. And I've been working with a few clients now, and I've had some really positive results already, and people are starting to really have a lot more confidence and not have that kind of limiting self-talk and doubt and things like that. So I'm really kind of looking forward to working with that as well.
Yeah, I'd love to just piggyback and ask you one more question about it. What do you see as the role of confidence, not just, with women, but more specifically at the poker table? Like, how important is confidence when you're playing poker?
I think it's huge. I think it's really important. I think that there are a lot of plays which take a lot of self-belief, and you often see poker players, especially I've been very fortunate to be friends with a lot of the top hyper players in the world. So I've kind of seen Skywalker play and seen some games of Lotte Lenya and Vita the Three. And these guys, you can see when they're really at the top of their game and they're really, really confident, they're more confident with making the big folds, 2-pair on the river, they can let it go. Or they're also happy to make the king high and ace high calls, the really marginal plays, which, if you're maybe on your B game and you're not feeling quite as confident, or you're scared of what others will think, or, you're worried that someone's going to post a hand that, they think you played badly on 2+2, you're not going to be able to make those plays. I also think that confidence is important, because if you're motivated and you're really kind of raring to go and you've got a lot of good positive momentum, you're going to be a lot more likely to play in longer sessions, which means that your kind of variance day to day will go down, because the longer sessions you play, as long as you're not tilting or playing badly, the more often, the more common it is to make money on one particular day.
And something was quite interesting that you were talking about there, and that's the people talking about hands publicly on 2+2. And I know it happens in Skype groups a lot as well. How much do you think that affects poker players in these communities when these hands are being made public and shown and things like that?
I think that in today's game, possibly less, especially in the reg on reg environment. I think that poker players who are really trying to move towards a more GTO style, and really, especially in hypers, which is my background, really focusing on becoming as unexploitable as possible. So from that point of view, I wouldn't say that it's an issue. Maybe if you're playing against recreational players, it's a bit different, because possibly not worrying as much what I've had coaching as well from quite a few of the top players, and I also think that, especially if you've got a coaching session coming up, and if you're worried, oh god, if I make this call and it's kind of on camera because someone's going to see it, that's going to be an issue. And also, having made some videos before for HUSNG.com, having that kind of anxiety and worrying, okay, one, am I going to give some of my plays away or some of my strategies? And two, if I make a bad play here, am I just going to edit it out, or will I start the video again, or what have you? So I guess there are some concerns that poker players might have.
Do you have any kinds of ideas or advice that you could share with players who are in a long downswing? Because I run into that quite a lot, players who are in a very, very long downswing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an issue that I've had a few times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think one, you have to kind of expand your time frame. So in hypers, if you're playing a decent amount, you should be having mostly winning weeks. That's the kind of time. It's fairly low variance poker. Whereas perhaps if you're an MTT reg, you might be just looking at year on year, kind of how much you made, or even longer time frame like that, how you've done the last 24 months or something. But I would say, look at your long-term results and think about how you've done that. I remember when I would have a negative downswing, and one thing that would kind of cheer me up, and trying not to be too egotistical, but I'd get the shark scope out and I'd see my little diamond star and little things like that, seeing, God, I've made so much money at poker relative to this downswing. If you've made $300,000, $400,000, or more at poker, and you drop 10K, although that 10K downswing could feel really bad at the time, in the big scheme of things, that's maybe 2% of what you've made lifetime. And just to, really focus on the good thing about downswing as well is that it can really help you focus and try and improve your game. I think if you're running too well and everything's going great, not just running over EV, but just running good in card distribution, that really won't force you to kind of look at your hands and really try and play your A game, because you're so desperate to get out of that. And I actually think a lot of the big improvements in my game have come out of being in a downswing, really wanting to do everything I can to get out of it as fast as possible. And that can be a really good motivator to sort of take your head out of the game for a little while and, really do a bit more studying, maybe watch some videos, which you can do a lot more freely when your egos took a bit of a bashing. And just go back into it.
And it's quite interesting you mentioned the sort of improving yourself after a downswing, because obviously you're moving into the hypnotherapy side, but like I do. And I think the self-improvement is starting to come into poker in a lot of ways. People are looking for this X factor, the next level up, the next thing to work on. And I think, sometimes that downswing can help people to understand, well, perhaps there are other parts of my lives I need to optimize as well. The exercise, the diet, meditation, working through issues and things. So I think it's quite interesting the way all of that sort of mixes together in terms of optimizing for poker, but in reality, it's sort of optimizing in general for later life as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I try and optimize all those aspects of my life. I meditated about 20 minutes before doing this podcast, just to have my head in the game, be a bit more focused. Diet's something I really pay a lot of attention to. I mess around with different kinds of diets. Normally I find a really high protein diet tends to work for me, but really cutting out processed foods and things like that. I remember a few years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was finding it hard to focus on poker, and really was, considering what can I do possibly? Do I need to take some Adderall, or, why is this? And I actually realized it was just processed food. And if you take that out, do some mind coaching, maybe do some meditation. I mean, meditation's so much easier now. I think that in the past, it's really been shrouded with this kind of mystic view of it. But if you really break it down and just say, look, scientifically, it makes you sharper, makes you more positive, and makes you think clearer, and really break it down in a very easy to grasp way and take out that kind of spiritual side to it, I think that makes it a lot more interesting to poker players, and especially if they can kind of see that bottom line coming from it.
So if someone were to come to you and say, I want to get my game just at the best it can be, would you have sort of a roadmap that you could kind of share, and maybe just a few ideas of what you think a person should do to just go in that direction?
Yeah, well, I think I'd have a few approaches. I think first would be the stuff we just talked about. So, writing down in detail, what does your diet look like? Like maybe keep a food diary for a week, something like that. Also, I'd, see if they were meditating, see if they had any other stresses in their life. If you've got money problems or girlfriend problems or any kind of thing that's really that, something quite serious that's always in the back of your head, you're never going to be playing your best poker. So try and get your personal life in check. Secondly, I'd say, have a schedule in work time. Study time. So, and that would be, working with one of the game theory solvers or watching videos, but really being honest. There's a difference so I play guitar. And what I find interesting is with a lot of my friends who also play guitar is that they recognize there's a difference between playing guitar and practicing guitar. Playing guitar is playing a song and you like it and you can sing to it and it's fun, but you're not pushing yourself. And in a lot of the kind of studies and the psychology I've looked at with deliberate practice, which Kay Anders Ericsson is the world authority of, Malcolm Gladwell based a lot of his stuff in Outliers on his works. A lot of progress comes from pushing yourself just 2 or 3% above your limit. So in poker, you're only going to get to a certain level of poker. And I know I made this mistake in my career, just thinking if I play, X amount of hours, 10,000, 15,000 hours, I'll become a world-class player. Now, if you look at the guys who are all world-class, they're spending hours and hours a week doing practice and, really working on their game. And that stuff is hard. Playing poker's pretty fun. Studying poker, I challenge you, it's probably not going to be as fun as just having a gamble, because poker by definition is a hobby that people do for fun, but it's the extra study and that kind of side of the game which will help you really get to optimizing your level and what you're capable of.
Yeah, this is something you've researched quite a lot, isn't it, Trisha? The deliberate practice and things.
Absolutely. I'm always talking about deliberate practice and how, doing deliberate practice, it actually restructures the neural circuitry of the brain. And there's very specific reasons why you have to engage in deliberate practice over a long period of time in order to, engage those neural circuits. And it's just a really interesting, fascinating field. But to your point, playing is not practicing, and deliberate practice is quite mentally taxing, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think that's why so many poker players shy away from it, because it's harder than just playing poker.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of the confidence with women work that you're doing, what's the direction you're taking with clients there?
With the confidence with women stuff, so I'm getting a podcast, which is going to be called the Inner Game Podcast. So interviewing people who are in that kind of scene, so dating coaches. The first one that I've done, which should be live and online by the time this podcast is released, is with a guy called Dave Diggler, who does Day Game. So I'll be speaking to a lot of dating coaches and kind of getting their approach and how they see things. In terms of working with clients, a lot of it will be first anxiety based. So get rid of the anxiety, and then working on getting rid of any limiting beliefs that are holding them back. And then after that, looking at ways to kind of really give them confidence so that they're excited by it, reframe it. So instead of feeling that you're an imposition or you're not worthy, thinking, how can I make it so that it's a really positive time for them? So when I used to be single and go on dates, I used to think, no matter the outcome of the date, whether it's a bad date or a good date, how can I give this person one thing, maybe an experience from my life or a story or a book recommendation or whatever it is that could really give them a positive, outcome from the date. And I think if you see it that way, like, how can I give to this person? How can I be of service? I think that's when that mindset shift occurs and you start looking forward to the interactions because of how much you can give and you don't feel like you're taking away from them.
Over the summer when I was at the World Series, I was on a table with a guy and he was telling a story about how he had taken some lessons from a guy who was basically a pickup artist. And this guy had taught him all these tricks about how to basically have one night stands with women. That doesn't really sound like what you're talking about here, though.
No, I mean, I think it's important to, everyone's going to want their own outcomes. I mean, I think most people who are looking to have hypnotherapy or work on their inner game, they probably just want a long-term girlfriend, a relationship to kind of get that area of their life sorted. And it's really a shame when people have all aspects of their life sorted. And the difference is, people go to university and spend years studying and all those years in school to get the job, because that's, a job is very important. And, you're going to spend 8 hours of your life most days doing a job. So it's important you find one you like, you're interested in, except no one gets any kind of coaching at all on how to approach a woman, what to talk about, and, also how to kind of make sure that you're in the right emotional space to be able to have a really fun, exciting interaction. And it's really about changing it from someone being worried about approaching and feeling all that anxiety to really looking forward to it and it being a really fun aspect of going out. So they're really looking forward to the interactions instead of dreading them.
Yeah, and I think most men out there can have at least one experience they can remember of being pretty uncomfortable talking to a woman. So this is something I don't know if this happens the other way, Trisha. I mean, is there the same level of anxiety as you're getting as you're talking to men, or is it a different situation for women as you're growing up?
Gosh, I think it's a different situation in that, although this is probably changing, but if you have a more traditional kind of interaction, it's on the man to kind of ask you on the date or initiate the conversation. So I could see, where the man would feel in a heterosexual sort of dynamic, this anxiety about, having to do the approach. And then, generally speaking, it's the woman in a traditional sense. Now, as I said, I realize times are changing, but the woman kind of holds the cards, if you will, and is saying, yes, or shooting you down and saying no. So
I mean, it certainly comes up a lot in my sessions that I hear about. So I think you're onto a winner here, Dan.
Well, yeah. But yeah, I'm very hopeful that we can get some really great results. I've already had some really good feedback from some of my clients, and hopefully looking forward to some more.
And with the hypnotherapy, what's quite interesting in terms of how that process is going to start working out for people is a lot of the time we've got these self-sabotages, these fear of failure, these fears that come a lot of the time from the adolescent years, where a rejection age 16 might still be haunting someone and they're not even aware that it's there haunting them. And when you help the person get through that memory and release any emotion they're holding, suddenly talking to a woman just feels like talking to a woman rather than this, free falling from an airplane sort of feeling that people describe. So it's certainly a way to really help guys with those issues and, give them, people who are really struggling to get a relationship, a chance at having a relationship. So really helpful.
To put it in perspective, I think after a session with you where we dealt with some kind of tangential issues, I think 3 weeks later I met my first girlfriend, And so that was really, really powerful effect. And that was probably the session that kind of steered me in the direction of, doing hypnotherapy full time as a job. So it'd be nice to get that transformation for other guys as well.
Awesome. Very, very cool.
You'd have to say results like that are not guaranteed, right? Just because they have a session.
Results may vary. Yeah. I would say a significant reduction in anxiety is very, very normal. I would say no reduction in anxiety would be far less normal from the sessions on this. Just being completely honest about it.
You know what, though? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, if you're not a little bit nervous, it is a little bit, especially if you're approaching someone you've never met before. I think a little bit nerves are normal and natural. I mean, otherwise you just wouldn't be human. We're all emotional. We all have these kind of baseline feelings. But when they get out of whack, I mean, we're talking about guys that haven't even started a conversation with a girl in months. And they see all their friends getting girlfriends or just enjoying being single and having an active dating life. And these guys who just feel completely left on the sidelines. And I just think that's a huge shame. And wouldn't it be great if we could change that around and raise some awareness as well, that like my client said just the other week about, no, you're not, you don't have to be stuck with this high stress level. You don't have to be stuck with this, this niggling self-doubt which stops you from having, the fun times. Like you're not stuck that way for the rest of your life. And I think that's a really empowering message that comes from hypnotherapy, and looking forward to pushing that forward with all my clients to come.
Now, what would you say to a person who not only feels anxiety about, say, interacting with the opposite sex, but some people feel anxiety about going to a hypnotherapist?
Yeah, I was certainly a little bit nervous before my first session. I mean, I always joke that hypnotherapist is one of the worst words for what we do, because it's got hypnosis and therapist. They're like two of the scariest words, and they've just put them together and mashed them into one. I mean, and both words, I think hypnosis in particular, are completely misunderstood. I still talk to friends and they think they can't be hypnotized, or it's not real, or, they think about Darren Brown or stage hypnosis. And it does take a while for people to kind of understand, no, this is serious clinical work, and you're really looking to make life-changing results. And it's great as well because it's such a faster acting process than other therapies, which, potentially can take years. Hypnotherapy is traditionally pretty short form, and, between 1 to 5 sessions, you should have really noticeable differences, and between 5 and 15, potentially, I'd say, life-changing differences.
And again, results may vary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I'm so evangelical after all the exposure I've had with Elliot, that now I kind of feel that if I don't change every client's life, I'm somehow letting them down. Come back, one more chance.
So where do you see your poker career going? Because we've got a really good sense of what you're doing with hypnotherapy, but we don't want to leave the poker completely in the dust, right?
No, I mean, I still really enjoy poker. I mean, I look back on, I'm 28 now, I'm almost 29. I look back on my 20s, and I've had some really, really cool experiences. And I'm incredibly grateful for the kind of lifestyle and the people I've met and everything that I've had from poker. So I've lived in a couple of poke houses, one in, a bunch in Bondi Beach in Australia, one in Bali and things like that. So I'll continue doing poker. It may be a bit of a juggling act for a while, but I definitely see myself going mindset coaching, inner game coaching, whatever you want to call it, at some point in the future. But I've started playing spins recently, and they're quite fun. And every time you play those, there's a 1 in a million chance of hitting the massive payout. So a little bit dopamine every time the wheel starts spinning. So I think I'll give those a bit of a crack before I hang up my poker playing boots forever.
And that's really cool. And Dan, where can people find your website or your Twitter or anything like that?
So the main website that I've been developing now, but should be live by the time this is released, is peakperformancedating.com. And that's where you can find out all about my hypnotherapy. If you have anxiety around talking to women, confidence issues, or you're running out of things to say, anything in that domain. Like I said, I've had some really wonderful experiences that probably aren't the results I've been having with my clients have just been really fantastic. So I'm really excited about that. And also I'm going to have a coaching page up on Elliot's website. So if you guys are interested in getting hypnotherapy and at a slightly cheaper rate than Elliot's, then please get in touch.
Yeah, so I'm fully booked a lot of the time, and I'm realistic that my pricing means that people, playing some of the lower stakes, realistically, they probably shouldn't be looking at working with me. And Dan's going to give those people another option to try hypnotherapy. If you're in some of those lower stakes. So yeah, check it out, guys. Well, we'll put the links on the page for this podcast if you want to click on it. And Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. I've been a fan of the podcast, and it's really cool to actually get to be a guest on it.
Perfect. We'll talk to you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk soon. Thanks, Tricia. Nice talking to you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
So it's nice to have Dan on the show. Really good guy, and he's out there to help these guys with their confidence.
So how does it feel to have a protege who basically looked at what you did with him and was like, you know what, I'm so taken with that, I want to do it too?
Yeah, as I say, I'm blushing over here in Salt Lake City. Yeah, it's really nice. And I mean, this is, I've told the story many times. I became a hypnotherapist because I had a fear of flying that it shocked me that I was able to overcome it after the hypnotherapy. And it's nice to feel that someone else has noticed so much change that they've decided to go in the same direction. So yeah, it's very, very, very cool. So yeah, I'm very happy with that.
I'm really interested in the fact that he's taken it in the way that he has, because, he's been around poker for a long time, and, you might think, well, he would just do sort of standard issue, poker issues, but then he's taken it in just a slightly different way. And I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, he's going to be doing the poker as well.
Right.
But I think he noticed some pretty big changes in those parts of his life. And I think there's quite a lot of benefit. I think if you're helping other people and you've seen a big change in your life, then it's understandable that that might be something that you'd want to specialize in, especially something that can have such a huge impact as confidence in that way.
Exactly. I think that confidence in one area has the potential to bleed over into a lot of other areas as well. So
Definitely.
People could, right? They could, you just don't know where it's going to go. Maybe you start out with this idea that you're going to get better at dating, but then it's going to end up in who knows what ways, right?
Often the root cause of an issue is, say it's anxiety. The root cause of the anxiety isn't necessarily just causing anxiety in, say, just the poker or what have you. It could be causing anxiety in lots of different areas in your life. So as you work through the root cause issues and understand yourself in a better way, often the change is in lots of parts of the life rather than just the specific area you started from. It's helpful if you find a big emotion as a starting point. So you want to find a big anxiety response or a big anger response, and then trace it back there. But that's it's certainly exciting stuff to see.
Exciting stuff, indeed.
So, Tricia, where can people find out about your stuff?
You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Tricia Cardner. You can find me on my website, which is drtriciacardner.com. You can find my books on Amazon, and Peak Poker Performance is pretty new. So yeah, you can improve not just your dating, but also your poker performance.
And if anyone's interested in my sessions or my MP3s or video courses, check out pokermindcoach.com. We shall talk to you soon.
We'll talk soon, guys. Bye.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Tricia Cardner. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.